This podcast is brought to you by Reynolds and Reynolds, the industry leader in automotive technology. Learn how Spark AI, Reynolds' unified AI data layer, can help you unlock your full potential by visiting rayray.com/spark-AI. That's REY.com/spark-AI.
Welcome to Daily Drive for Monday, September 15th, 2025. I'm Kellen Walker in Las Vegas. Today on the show, Ford plans to demolish its headquarters and relocate to its engineering campus close by. Elon Musk buys $1 billion of Tesla stock after his $1 trillion pay proposal. And Tesla halts orders of its cheapest Cybertruck, while Ram cancels its EV pickup. Plus, we'll hear the first part of our exclusive interview with GM CEO Mary Barra. She talks about GM's EV strategy going forward and what she thinks of the current trade landscape.
President Trump has been very clear of wanting to have a level playing field. I think tariffs were one part of that.
Let's run through all the news you need to know to keep up in the auto industry. Ford Motor will vacate its headquarters of nearly 70 years, the Glass House in Dearborn, Michigan. The automaker will move to the Product Development Center that it's building nearby in a bid to have executives closer to the engineers and designers who craft its vehicles. Ford CEO Jim Farley and Executive Chair Bill Ford told employees today in an email that the 2.1 million square foot building called the Hub will be twice the size of its current headquarters. Some employees have already started working at the site, which is scheduled to be dedicated in November. Ford plans to demolish the 12-story glass house by mid-2028. CEO Elon Musk is buying about $1 billion worth of shares in Tesla. The move comes in the wake of Tesla's proposal to give Musk an unprecedented compensation package that could be worth up to $1 trillion. The billionaire bought the shares indirectly through a revocable trust on September 12th, according to a regulatory filing released Monday. And Tesla's least expensive Cybertruck has vanished from the automaker's U.S. order page, as battery electric pickups across the industry struggle with lackluster sales. At the same time, Ram has canceled plans for its first fully electric pickup. It attributes that decision to slowing demand for battery-powered vehicles. The industry pullback comes as a $7,500 federal tax credit for electric vehicles expires on September 30th. And those are today's headlines. You can find more details on all those stories at autonews.com. Here to talk more about Ford's decision to move its global headquarters is our own Michael Martinez, who covers Ford for us at Automotive News. Mike, welcome back to Daily Drive.
Thanks for having me.
So, Mike, why is Ford making the move to a new headquarters now?
Well, I think anybody who's been inside the Glass House headquarters will understand that it's time. That building has been around for 70 years. It's pretty old. The amenities aren't great. The heating and cooling isn't really that great in that building. All the windows, the sun tends to bake down on you, even when you're in the executive offices. But Ford's doing this essentially because it wants its executives to be closer to the action. The way it stands today, if they want to go to a product review meeting, they have to get in their car, drive a few miles, battle for parking, walk down really long hallways, and it takes a really long time. Bill Ford said even if you just have a 1 hour meeting, it takes 2+ hours out of your day. So their goal is to co-locate everybody in one large central campus, make it walkable, make it a fun place to work with good amenities, and really try to attract and retain some top talent.
And also, crosstown rival General Motors is also moving into a new headquarters early next year. We're about to hear an interview with Mary Barra from that new location. Is that just a coincidence, or is there something more to that timing?
I think the timing between GM and Ford is purely coincidental. I mean, maybe Ford's getting tired of reading all the GM headlines about moving into the Hudson's building downtown. But I think there is that bigger trend that we're seeing among any automaker or any business, really. And that's what I had mentioned in terms of attracting and retaining talent. You saw that's why Ford spent all that money and energy renovating the train station in Detroit. They wanted something unique and special for people to come to for their tech talent to build that next generation in terms of mobility and software and technology. And in Dearborn, they want people to want to come to work. They just called all their workers back 4 days a week. You see on all the chat forums and Reddit and things like that, people aren't super happy about it, partly because the amenities aren't that great. The buildings are old and showing their age. So Ford wants to be seen as one of the top places to work, not in automotive, but also in terms of software and technology. Same with GM. So by offering these new buildings, state of the art, fun places to be in, hopefully they can appease their workers.
Everyone likes a good work environment. Mike, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Coming up, the first part of Automotive News' exclusive interview with General Motors CEO Mary Barra from the company's new headquarters in Detroit. That's next on Daily Drive.
As your business gets more complex, it feels like productivity can't go any higher. You need a way to move forward to a future where you don't have to start every interaction from scratch. You don't have to search for actionable information. You don't have to manually pull data to make decisions. You need a future where the complex is made simple and you can do more with less. How do you get there? It all starts with a spark. Unlock your full potential with the next generation of automotive dealership technology that actually does some of the heavy lifting for you by texting leads, transcribing calls, making data-backed recommendations, and boosting your overall productivity so that you can spend your time and energy on what truly matters, selling cars and growing your business. Spark AI, Reynolds' unified AI data layer, can empower your dealership to operate more efficiently and effectively than ever before, so you can do more, sell more, and make more. To learn how Spark AI can help your dealership reach its full potential, visit rayray.com/spark-AI today. That's REYREY.com/spark-AI to learn more.
Welcome back to Daily Drive. I'm Kellen Walker. Making long-term product decisions in the murkiness of today's climate requires mapping out multiple scenarios. That's what General Motors CEO Mary Barra told our own Lindsay Van Hully and Nick Bunkley in an interview last week after Automotive News Congress. They spoke at Hudson, Detroit, the site of GM's new global headquarters, which the automaker plans to occupy in January. Today and tomorrow, we'll bring you the full exclusive interview here on Daily Drive. Here's the first part of that conversation.
Well, thank you very much for joining us.
Absolutely.
And congratulations as well on being recognized with an Automotive News Centennial Award.
Well, thank you. As I said to Casey, it's on behalf of the GM team. My leadership team and every person at General Motors, I think, contributes to where GM is today.
Between the Centennial Award and also it being our 5-year incarnation of the 100 Leading Women list as well, thinking about leadership and some of the discussions that you kind of mentioned on stage and how you sort of view, the arc of your career at this stage of it and how it ultimately connects with, the legacy that you ultimately hope to leave.
Well, I kind of am focused on the business, not so much on my legacy. But I think, creating the right culture at GM where we keep learning and growing. I want to make sure GM is here for the next 20 years, 50 years, 100 years. So it's making those investments. But it's also the culture, this culture of continuing to learn and grow and be curious. And so hopefully we're creating that culture that's going to continue to propel GM forward, many, many decades into the future.
We recognized you in GM for a couple of years now for, being able to manage through uncertainty without significant disruption. Prices have remained strong. Incentives have remained, lower than average. Inventory still kind of remains in line with where you want it to be. And just thinking about all of that taken together, how you've been able to do that through all of the ups and downs that we've seen over the last few years.
Well, I think it is the resiliency of the team, and with whatever challenge, whether, from COVID to semiconductor shortages to other supply chain disruptions that we've had. But I think it's also staying focused. I mean, when you look at our ability to be growing market share and while having discipline incentives, at the low end from an incentive perspective from the rest of the industry, maintaining our inventories, that's all starts because we have great product that people want to buy. So I think that is the key to, being able to have vehicles customers want to purchase. And it starts there. And then the discipline that we operate the business, we will not overproduce. And that allows us to maintain the inventories and then also have, lower industry leading type incentives.
How do you balance all of that with the interest rate environment that we're in right now as well? And have you noticed that customers are experiencing any kind of affordability challenges right now?
Well, we always look at affordability. We think it's very important. And we look especially at our entry level vehicles to make sure that, we have that affordability. We get a lot of feedback from our dealers, but we also want to make sure that every year from a pricing perspective, there are changes based on what new technologies are added, features, et cetera. So it's a really dynamic environment that we operate in. But again, it starts with making sure we're focused on the customer, continuing to do things more efficiently so we can give them more without large price increases.
All of that obviously gets harder when you factor in tariffs. And I know you've said the expected cost this year, $4 to $5 billion, but that gets somewhat offset this year and into future years as more of the mitigations that you're working on come into play. Is that $4 to $5 billion ultimately sustainable long term? And how do you sort of look at what that point is?
Well, I think the $4 to $5 billion, when we said that was unmitigated, and we said that our goal is to mitigate 30% of it this year. And that's what we're intent on doing. But we started off by making when there was still a lot of uncertainty what was going to happen with the tariffs, and making what we called no regret moves, shifting production so it served different countries and mitigated the tariffs or eliminated the tariffs. Working with our supply chain, we found some of our suppliers that they actually had USMCA compliant parts that hadn't filled out the paperwork. So, but then working with them on what were the easy shifts that we could make into then some of the more substantial changes, like the footprint changes we announced and the $5 billion investment between the production that we're changing from an assembly perspective and also where we allocated a new engine. And so as we continue to do those, and those plants will come online in the next, less than 2 years now, that we will continue to work. There's also been, I think, improvements from a tariff perspective with some of the executive orders that were signed that recognize how many vehicles we do build in this country, and getting credit for those, as well as all the other work we do in this country that really are important to the economy, important to creating jobs across many spectrums.
And I wonder if some of that has been sort of a wait and see approach for some of those agreements to be reached and finding out where things are going to settle long term. GM has absorbed a lot of the costs so far. And I wonder if that is because of uncertainty about how long they might last or what those rates ultimately might be. And does there come a point at which GM, has to pass on more of those costs, whether to dealers or to consumers or suppliers down the road?
Well, I think you hit the point, or you hit the point really well before. We do need to stay focused on affordability. That's why we're working on how do we drive efficiencies? How do we make shifts? And we didn't just wait. We're one of the companies that made a commitment, even when we didn't have a lot of certainty that we have now with some of the different tariff rates, of making the decisions to move some things to the United States. So we're going to continue to assess what the right business is, recognizing we're long lead, but we're going to continue to work to have affordability by working on every single aspect of the cost equation, but also giving consumers more value.
So how much conversation is there still happening between you and the administration, others in the industry in similar positions as you, to just talk about, whether this is still even, the right way to go about this and show that, this is what the consequences are? I mean, you're taking billions of dollars of hit to your bottom line because of this. How much effort is there to talk about with the administration, maybe things need to change at some point? Or...
Well, I think, though, if you step back and look at it, I think the President Trump has been very clear of wanting to have a level playing field. I think tariffs were one part of that. Wanted to strengthen manufacturing in the U.S. and jobs in the U.S. Those are things that, we are important to us as well. So I think there's some aspects of it. And what I've always said is let's have a level playing field. And for decades, we haven't. So when I look at some of the changes that are happening, it actually, I think, is accomplishing what the administration said that they'd like to do, to have a level playing field so U.S. companies can compete. And that's what we're intent on doing. And I think, we're seeing share growth right now, even in this environment. And then to your first question, of course, we continue to have dialogue with the administration at different levels to make sure, because a lot of it is making sure they understand the impact, or in some cases, what is a secondary or, down the road type event that happens. And I have to say that they've been very responsive to wanting to understand and make sure that they're taking that all into account as they set policy.
And you get the sense, it sounds like then you get the sense that some of the changes that we're seeing, or some of the policies and such are in response to that they're receptive to the arguments you put forth, or the facts that you try to put on the table.
Well, I think some of the adjustments that have been made, or understanding, if you're tariffing a vehicle, then also all the parts, what that means. So I think they have been receptive to understand that. But I also think tariffs are here to stay. We're working on how are we aligned with what the administration is trying to accomplish, and then make sure that they have the information to help encourage that. And I think that's the productive way to move forward. And that's what we've been doing since day one.
I want to talk about electric vehicles a bit. I know it came up on stage today, and I know there's going to be some shift in production. It sounds like anticipating what the demand might look like in the fourth quarter once that tax credit goes away. You said earlier that you don't want to overproduce. And so there's going to be some downtime at some of the EV plants, plans to hold off on a second shift at Fairfax when the Chevy Bolt comes back. Talk, I guess, about what's behind that decision. And when you look at where inventory is, where production is, and where you're anticipating demand to go, when you have to make those kinds of decisions about output.
Well, we have monthly scheduling meetings where we look at what do we need to build, again, with the discipline that we've had for more than a decade now of not overproducing and being in line where customer demand is. I think it's pretty clear as we get to the end of September that the $7,500 consumer tax credit is going to be going away for the most part. I keep reading articles but if you made the deal, but it's going to be gone relatively soon. We do think there's pull ahead demand right now from an EV perspective. That's pull ahead that without that end would probably have been in October, November, or December. So I don't think we're really going to have a good read of what normalized EV demand is going to be into early next year. But I think if you look before there was an IRA credit, what the demand was, and the fact that now we have much more charging infrastructure. We have many more EVs. I mean, General Motors, we have 14 models, all over 300 miles of range. And so there's more desirable vehicles, more affordable vehicles, and more charging. So we're going to be ready because, as we've said, EVs are our North Star, but we also want to be led by the consumer. The consumer will tell us. And, when you think about when someone buys a new vehicle, when we all buy a new vehicle, we're pretty rational about what do we need? What can we afford? What are the use cases? I think it's different if you only have one vehicle. Where if you're a 2-car family, you can start to look at, say, hey, maybe one of those in the garage should be an EV, because if I have to make that unexpected longer road trip and I'm not confident the charging infrastructure is built out quite yet, although that gets better every quarter, I've got choice. And then I can enjoy both. So I think we're going to learn a lot in 26 of what demand is. And I think, again, we've never expected it to be linear. And I think charging is a big piece. Affordability is a big piece. And those will continue to improve.
Are you looking at, in kind of in keeping with the overall incentive strategy, are you looking at having to offer anything in the fourth quarter or into 26 to sort of offset the loss of the 7,500? Is there an equivalent GM incentive that might be coming, or as you're thinking about pricing and incentives on EVs going forward, what that looks like?
Well, I don't send incentives, but if I was, I probably wouldn't tell you. But I don't make that determination. So I'm going to leave that to the sales and marketing team, because they do that very well. And again, they stay focused on what the consumer is telling them what they need, and then the very disciplined approach we have in go to market.
I think big picture, thinking about it more, just if the tax credit goes away and that's supported EV purchases and leases, is it possible, or is the company considering, do we have to look at that maybe going forward if demand doesn't pick up maybe the way that we hope it would?
Well, again, we have the opportunity to sell internal combustion ICE vehicles and EVs. So we can go where we can build and supply and have robust products, award-winning products, leading products in each of those segments. So again, I'm not going to comment on our fourth quarter incentive strategy, but I think what we offer is consumer's choice, and we can adjust our production to meet those demands. And I'm really proud of the fact that at GM, we're growing right now in both internal combustion engine vehicles and electric vehicles. So we have to see where this all settles out. And then we'll work through that period, and then we'll look at, how we continue to grow as we continue to improve the profitability of our EVs while we continue to improve both ICE and EV from all aspects.
It feels like with EVs, this was an area where, you really got out ahead of a lot of your competitors and taking a really bold approach to putting this big plan in place. The kind of thing that people for old GM always used to say wouldn't do. And then here we are, and there's so much pushback against EVs. It's not even, doesn't feel like it's linear, but that it's like so much political and just people say, people don't want EVs, whether or not that's really true. But, how do you deal with that kind of environment when, you got out ahead and then all kinds of things come together to take EVs, make them this kind of issue that, nobody knows what to do with in some ways.
Well, I think if you look at EVs, we have seen with our EV buyers, and I think this is true across the industry, once someone buys an EV, they are very much inclined, I can't remember the exact percent, but overwhelming majority say, I will buy an EV again. And again, that's with where we don't have as robust a charging infrastructure. I think GM's been a big piece of that with offering vehicles like the Chevrolet Equinox EV and the Chevrolet Blazer EV that, really starts to get to a different part of the market and offer great choices from an EV perspective. Obviously, a year ago, we were on a different path from a regulatory environment, and we invested because that was the right thing to do. That's why we want to see what the demand will be. Again, without the $7,500 tax credit, I would expect that we're going to see a different level of EV that, again, may be on a slower path, but will still continue to grow. And we'll adjust to that, and we'll make the adjustments that we need to make across the whole manufacturing pipeline and product pipeline. But I'm really proud of the fact that we were very strategic in the EVs that we put into market, looking at where were the value, what were the right from a Chevrolet customer to a Cadillac customer, from a luxury, what were the right segments. We didn't just replicate our internal combustion engine platform, and we still continue to invest in internal combustion engines, especially in continuing to drive fuel efficiency improvements, vehicle and model after model, engine after engine. So obviously there was a pretty big change in direction. So we're gonna evaluate and make the right changes and then continue to move forward.
GM CEO Mary Barra spoke with our own Lindsay Van Hully and Nick Bunkley in an exclusive interview. Come back tomorrow for the conclusion of that conversation.
We're at the early days of the vehicle is a software platform, and how do we continue to add things to it that make the customer's life easier?
That's Daily Drive for today. I'm Kellen Walker. Thanks to Automotive News executive producer Jake Neer, as well as our own Michael Martinez, Lawrence Iliff, and Vince Bond Jr. for their reporting for today's podcast. You can get the latest news on manufacturing, product plans, and everything happening in the auto industry at autonews.com. We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you think of the show and the topics we covered today. Send us an email at dailydrive@autonews.com or leave us a voicemail at 313-444-2774. And if you enjoyed the podcast, remember to like, leave a review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.